That's coming in 9.0.5, so it definitely makes the buff a little bit more valuable. Not really like going to be present here. However, it's definitely something to think about whenever you're moving forward into the next patch. I do think that both teams will actually end up having a Venthyr on their side because the lanterns and that Sinfall boon buff that you do get from the lanterns is actually super important for MDI.
Let's get into it. Game number 1 getting started between Echo and Sloth in Sanguine Depths.
Alright, so it looks like both of the teams are doing a very similar pull as they use the Fear Sigil to that first trash pack next to the canister here, the Venthyr one, and then we saw the tank just run through, pull the rest of it, and the priest gripping the tank back to gather everything up on top of this lantern to make sure they get all of those buffs from it when the DKs are activating them. So both of the DKs looks like are playing Venthyr.
Yeah. And so the most notable thing here too is that you're making sure that you dodge out of the Mistdancer's thrust. You see Echo doing a really good job of placing those images of that Mistdancer straight into the wall. Where Sloths, they're kind of all over the place, and I think that that's one of the biggest reasons that they were and are a bit slow on being able to get this trash pack goes down. As you actually do see their tank's cheat death end up proccing. He has both of his cheat deaths procced, his last resort and his trinket. This pull is lasting so incredibly long because they weren't able to get more of those Sinfall boon buffs early. So that kind of slowed down their damage. On top of that, they had the Mistdancer, like, kind of all over the place. So that caused them to be a little bit slower as well. And so while they are going to be able to get down this pack with minimal amounts of issues, I guess I had a full wipe, but even then it's like... they finished the pull is what I was trying to... It was more to the point. It was like they were able to actually finish the pull, but it just started to spiral out of control so quick.
It was messy, right? And one thing to note as well was that Echo actually had pulled this Brute on top of that first pull. So Echo had a bigger pull and still finished it off faster. Of course, one thing that you just talked about is the Mistdancer as well. It looks like Sloth was mainly focusing on AoE damage, while Echo had AoE damage and a lot of single target focus onto this Mistdancer, just because it has so much HP. Unfortunately, a tank going down for Sloth here. As it looked, I'm not really sure if they were trying to skip this and it didn't work out, or if just something went wrong as they were gathering this pull. But yeah, just issues for them as they're just trying to kite backwards now, as their tank just released and they're getting back into that trash pull. But Echo, on the other hand, just pulling a lot of trash on top of this first boss with Bloodlust as well. This is a huge pull, actually. Wow.
Yeah. This is a very scary pull, but it's definitely facilitated by them being able to have that prideful buff. It allows them to be able to just kind of burn straight through these ticks before too many of the engorges go off, before too many of the brute slams end up hitting the tank. This is actually a pretty scary boss to be tanking because you have the slam from Crixus and you have the slam from the brute. Both of those actually do a pretty considerable amount of damage. And Crixus is already sub 25% right as the first Severing Smash comes out. And it looks like they're not even going to soak those orbs. They're just going to continue to burn straight through the boss, just completely foregoing any of those orbs and just focusing primarily on boss damage here.
Yeah, huge amount of boss damage as you can see, Crix is just melting, going down here. Looks like they tried to avoid as many orbs as possible here at the end, but the boss was just not dying fast enough, so Zalia had to soak 2 extra orbs, but everyone is fine as they're now just sitting down, eating a little bit to get their HP back, while now is gathering up the next pull. Looks like they're pulling 2 trash packs plus the Sentinel on top, which can be very dangerous. Fragments actually looks like he got hit by the AoE there, unfortunately, but didn't go down, so it's okay. As Enkler, though, unfortunately not as lucky as Fragments, and Enkler actually going down on his DK.
Yeah. So now Echo making sure that they are continuing to kite out this gargoyle. Zalia dodging out of the way of that upheaval. This Chamber Sentinel is mostly just tank damage, and you can actually dodge the frontal from him as well if you are careful. He gives pretty good percent to health ratio, but so they're just like kind of standing here dealing with this. Then they're going to get ready to pull some of the more tedious mobs in this dungeon, whether that be the Grand Overseers or the Wicked Oppressors. These Overseers are the most annoying, and you actually do see Mirrors and Frag sitting off to the side, while Genji... Oh, what is Genji actually doing? So he walked forward in Invis, but I don't.
He
Okay,
pulled
so walk
the
forward in
he
invis to be able to start
activated.
the RP.
Yeah, exactly. So, okay, so what makes Echo's strategy so good in Sanguine Depths is their management of the Venthyr lanterns, actually. Because there's a lot of these lanterns throughout this whole dungeon. And one thing you can do, which is not being used that often on live servers, is the fact that you can actually extend or refresh your buff. So the way it works is that the lanterns are getting activated by the Venthyr Covenant, and if you kill mobs close to that lantern while it's active, you get a stacking buff on you the more mobs you kill. And if you activate the next lantern before your buff actually ran out, you can refresh that duration in it. And that's the whole Echo strategy, where they just plan everything around these lanterns, making sure they constantly keep this damage increase on them. Of course, if you make a mistake and you do not refresh the lantern, then it's a huge time loss. But Echo seem to be having this perfect strategy where they always manage to somehow refresh it, and that's why they have these really, really fast runs.
I mean, on top of that, too, I feel like their Wicked Oppressor management is also immaculate. Basically, they're able to make sure that they don't have too many stacks of that, like, decreased damage dealt buff. Or for the Grand Overseers, their Grand Overseer management. Wicked Oppressor is the caster. They're making sure that they don't have too many stacks of the decreased damage dealt buff, and they're able to deal with that super well. You do see Frag opening up that lantern. You're able to pull all of these Oppressors and Acolytes into the lantern through the wall. The activation radius is large enough to where you are able to get some of the buff straight through the wall right there. And so that's why you see Echo. They do Mind Soothe that one Chamber Sentinel, but basically the reason that they do it like this is because they want to avoid that Sentinel pretty much at all costs. Now Echo, like Nagura is saying, running, they're probably going to try to refresh their Sinfall boon buff with the next lantern, exactly as Nagura was talking about how they manage that buff. There are two or three, I think there's two lanterns in this corridor, and the first one is like immediately off to the right, and you can see it right there. They're starting to get low on the duration of that buff, probably due to the fact that it only lasts 60 seconds, but I'm assuming that they're going to refresh it at almost what is a perfect time.
Yep, so the buff that just ran out was the Pride buff, right?
Yeah.
So they definitely, we don't see the actual Lantern buff on the players right now, but you can see a little bit of an animation around them. So we'll see if they manage to refresh it. They also threw a ink cap on that patrol, as you can see in the back. They don't want to pull it on top of this pull, so we just saw the ink cap from Maris coming out. And bursting is really something we haven't really talked about yet. Bursting and affixes. Fragment's going down, unfortunately. They have to use a battle rest here to get him back up because it's Pride as well. So the engineering rest coming out really quickly, actually, by one of the players to get him back up. So not too much time lost here.
I'm not sure if that makes you lose
a little bit of time loss.
Does that make you lose the
I'm
lantern
not sure
buff?
either. Probably. It probably makes you drop it, right?
Yeah,
I would assume so.
So, I mean, the lantern buff is honestly stronger than Pride, especially with the strategy that they're doing, because they're going to have 10 stacks effectively for like the full duration of the lantern for like multiple minutes. And so they're able to have like 50% damage gain. So it's even stronger than potentially what is even the prideful buff. So frag, I don't know if you lose it whenever you die. It basically is the problem. And if you do, that actually is a pretty big deal.
Yeah, one more thing I wanted to talk about before Fragments went down was the bursting affix, right? Of course, we do see the meta in the MDI is just running these priests, not necessarily because of their Master Spell, right? It's a different reason why they're running them, but Master Spell is just so nice for bursting. That's why we see them finish off all of the mobs kind of at the same time, almost like bolstering. So we then see that Master Spell come out of the priests to be able to just completely get rid of those bursting stacks, so they don't have to commit any of those defensive cooldowns. So really well done by the priest, making sure they're getting rid of that. And yeah, just gathering even more trash as they constantly just have this buff up, and they're juggling the buffs between Pride and the Venthyr buff, right?
Yeah.
Just throughout this whole area, they just have this constant damage increase on the whole group.
You ever just have 50% increased damage plus a prideful buff for multiple minutes at a time?
Yeah.
So now Executor Tarvald is being pulled, and I think they should still have like probably 30 more seconds of this lantern on top of the boss itself. So you do see the boss actually, they don't have any offensive CDs, but even then their DPS are still sustaining 7 and 8k DPS. It looked like the only thing that they ended up having there is Fragments' cooldowns. It looked like Mira's didn't have his win. And so Yeah, that's actually still an insane amount of damage that is coming out of the group. Gingy waiting for his combustion, doing healer damage, which is that's pretty normal for a mage without CDs. It's just like kind of chill next to the healer, and then now he's combusting and now skyrocketing up, starting to get over 5k pretty quickly.
Yeah, just really well done by Echo as they're dealing with Torvald, of course. Torvald, one of the most difficult bosses as a whole, to be honest.
Yeah.
So it is fortified, of course, so they don't have to deal with a tyrannical Torvald, but this boss can be very dangerous. Looks like they're dealing with it really well on Echo's side. Sloth, on the other hand, after these initial mistakes that they had, they're looking to do a little bit better now, but of course they're up 11 deaths, so a 50-second disadvantage compared to Echo, and of course they're also just behind in the whole dungeon, so it's really hard for Sloth here against Echo. But it is very possible that Sloth decided that they might not want to put a lot of practice time into this series against Echo, but rather focus their time against maybe like a lower bracket series, because as we talked about before, this is just so difficult for them as like the first time they're participating in this tournament, having to play against Echo, and then also in the dungeons where Echo is just doing so well in.
I mean, on top of that, like if you're going to practice for dungeons in this series, why wouldn't you? I think you should practice for like the time trial ones that you've already have an established strategy for, as opposed to spending just an absurd amount of time in the Sanguine Depths, because this dungeon, it feels like, is one of those dungeons that whenever you have the strategy down pat, it can be pretty fast, but like the room for mistakes and the room for just like major time losses is also incredibly high.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, one more thing I saw about Sloth is that they're actually they play Alliance on live servers, and they're all in the same guild. The guild is actually called Sloth, and they're World 33 Mythic guild.
Are they?
So yeah, they're actually a really good guild as far as I have seen. And it looks like they're also, as I said earlier, they're also really good at multi-classing, as they also brought the Rogue in that Necrotic Wake time trial as well. So yeah, it really looks like they might be a good contender here in the MDI in the future. Of course, this is their very first showing, so not doing too well in the Sanguine Depths, but we'll see what they have in store for us maybe in the next couple of dungeons as well. Maybe this really is just a dungeon where they said, you know what, it's not worth it for us to put a lot of time into practicing this one.
Well, yeah, exactly, and you have to be kind of real with yourself. Are you going to beat Echo and Sanguine Depths? Unfortunately, Sloth having some more issues. Healer and Mage go down. They're probably going to have another full wipe. Whereas on the side of Echo, they're able to kill off the third boss here momentarily. They're only going to get one more Rite of Supremacy, which is a lot of group damage, but it shouldn't be too scary. They do have one mob CC'd off to the side that I suspect that they're going to be dealing with to be able to spawn their 80% Pride before making their way to the final boss. So yeah, there's the Wicked Oppressor. The question is, are they going to Invis Potion off this Pride, or are they going to kill it? So it looks like they're positioning themselves to be able to kill... Okay, so they're killing this Pride. It's kind of weird that they spawned it right there and then like walked around letting it get like 3 or 4 stacks before actually engaging it.
I think it looked like Sally was trying to get a drink off. Because Sally was sitting down drinking a little, but look at the mana. He's still pretty out of mana, so this might be a little bit dangerous. But the Manifestation of Pride is just dropping so quickly.
It just
as
died.
A huge amount of damage. Yeah, it died so fast. They just completely exploded that Pride, so I guess the mana is not going to be an issue for Sally if the mob is just dead immediately. Now, it looks like they're dealing with this... No, okay, so they're going to be Shadow Melting off these 3 mobs here now, just tanking it a little, almost going down even, but it managed to survive, and now the Shadow Melt is coming out.
Yeah, and also, interestingly enough, you did see now grabbing that shield that you mostly end up using on General Call here for the Gloom Squall cast, but you're able to use it for like some defensive mitigation, and so you saw Echo kind of stacking up, using that shield for defensive mitigation, and dealing with the Pride. So that was definitely a way that they were able to help a lot of their damage intake and help Zalia's mana. The first pull that they do on General Call is so dangerous right here for Echo, making sure that they DPS down all these Gargants. The biggest point of failure here is probably that on Now, just due to the amount of tank damage that he's going to be taking. On top of that, it's also bursting. So you did see you saw the Massive Spell for the bursting as well. Really important. It's one of the advantages of Disc Priest. I actually feel like Disc Priest is really underrepresented on live a lot of the times. But whenever Disc Priest is strong, stuff like bursting and just like the general like damage output and the utility that they bring to the group, Discipline Priest is incredibly potent.
Yeah, definitely. Really helps them out specific. Oh, Sally going down as we just talked about this freeze, but thankfully they did have a battle rest come up. So, oh no, Sally, just as he got rest, he got hit by the bleed effect from General Cal.
Oh no.
General Cal actually jumping onto the aggro target once in a while, applying a bleed effect not only to the aggro target, not only to the tank, but also to everyone around the tank. So it looked like Sally got rest into that tank range and got hit by that bleed immediately as he got rest. But thankfully the pain suppression saved his life there. That would have been a disaster if he went down here because they don't have any more battle rests, right? And they skipped those 3 mobs. So that means the ally could not come back. So that's one thing that we have to mention about this gauntlet. If you have anything go wrong and you don't have a battle rest here, then it's actually impossible for them to really get back. Because you're just permanently in combat. I guess they could try to run through and then Shadow Melt off the aggro, but that's going to be really hard for a healer to go through there without dying, right?
Exactly, and he could do it. I think that there is potential, especially with like something like Mind Soothe, but that would have put his group in a lot of trouble if he wasn't able to stabilize. But Echo doing a really good job being able to restabilize here, and it's like another one of those things is just Echo's mistakes, and they've always been like this whenever they were Wunderbar, whenever they were Method EU. Whenever they have mistakes, they're always so quick to be able to recover in an exceptional fashion and like really minimize the losses of any mistake that they even do incur. Like they had Fragments go down. They immediately res him, right? And it's like, even though he is the battle res on their team, they're able to get him up in such a quick manner that it ended up not really costing them more than just like the 5 seconds that was really lost. And so now Echo here, dealing with the last little bit of trash. Do you think that they're going to Invis Potion off this last Pride? It looks like where they're pulling the Huntsmans and the Gargans to, it looks like they're going to probably spawn the Pride far enough away to where they're able to Invisibility Potion it off.
Yeah, very possible, because, I mean, they do have Bloodlust available, so
yeah,
it might even be possible that they choose to play it to get that extra damage increase. We'll see what they do. Sometimes the teams say that it's actually worth it to play the Pride. If you have all offensive cooldowns available, then the time that you lose for having to deal with it is actually made up by the damage you gain with the Bloodlust. So we'll see. Yeah, it looks like they actually are dealing with it because of that just Bloodlust and all the offensives that they have, and also saving the potions, of course, that you don't have to commit for the invisibility. So yeah, also looks like they might even be pulling it on top of the boss a little, which would be very interesting if they do that, because they know at this point how far they are ahead, right? Okay, so it looks like they're doing it anyway, which is really... Sally going down, they don't have a battle rest. This is actually going to be a full... This is going to be a full team wipe. They're not going to be able to do this. I don't think so. Without the healer having those... Actually, Fragments somehow managed to survive. He Shadow Melted off. It might be. I mean, if they avoid all of the... If they actually avoid all of the charges, but the AoE damage that the boss casts actually still does damage even through the shield. So, I mean, it might be possible. Let's see if they manage to do so. If we see the Gloom Squall coming up, Gingy might have to use Cauterize or whatever. Oh, okay, so he actually didn't Cauterize. Yeah, this looks fine. Gingy can blink this charge. You can actually not get hit by it if you just outrun it or you blink it or whatever. So it looks like Gingy avoided it. Fragments did not. So you have the bleed effect on Fragments. But DKs, they have a decent amount of self-healing, right? So it looks like he's actually fine. Maris also having a bleed on him. Fragments jumping really low. No, Fragments going down, unfortunately, with that second bleed effect. Still 9% of boss HP to go. I mean, this might be doable. I think they can do it.
It's really scary. Mirrors is sustaining over 2k HPS currently. Yeah. He's casting Vivify. He's casting Vivify for actually just the first 20 seconds of the boss after Xaylia died, trying to get the rest of the group stabilized. I think
they should actually rest Fragments when their rest is coming back, because their rest is coming back soon. I want them to actually rest Fragments instead of Xaylia.
The rest
who needs a healer? I mean.
The res comes up in like 30 seconds now because it's at 20, but then they have the 20 seconds of death differential.
True. Yeah, true. Yeah, it's still gonna be a while. I guess at that point the boss is just gonna be dead.
Maybe. This is definitely a feat. I think we've all been here where somebody dies and you end up 4-manning the boss for an incredibly long period of time. Echo doing a really good job of being able to stabilize, and again, I guess it's very unfortunate that they had multiple deaths, but it was like I was talking about earlier. They were able to kind of minimize their losses.
They actually did rest fragments. I like it. Good job. As Gingy is popping the combustion using the ice block as well, and they just there we go. They finished with about who needs healers really. I mean.
You're gonna get a JB tweet.
Goodness.
JB's gonna tweet about this now, talking about the necessity of healers.
Never ever seen the healers so disrespected. Unbelievable. Congratulations to Echo. Despite a couple of deaths at the end there, they do of course take that victory in the Sanguine Depths. And a little out of character for a dungeon that we've really kind of talked constantly as well, Zyro, about how this is their dungeon, this is their home in a lot of cases.
Yeah, and I think it's really unfortunate for Sloth that, this is their first MDI they've qualified for as a team. They're super excited to play, and in your first match, you play against Echo, like the most decorated team in the history of MDI, right? I mean, it's really hard to actually try to glean any information about how Echo's going to perform later on in the tournament from this match, because this is the equivalent of a T-ball, at bat for Echo. They don't really have to do much here other than just play their strategy. And, credit to Sloth or credit's due, they were able to stay within a boss of Echo, but I think the real major takeaway is that Echo really wasn't able to stay too clean in this dungeon. And up against better teams like Perplexed or, Obey or any of the top 6 teams, really, that kind of thing isn't going to fly.
Yeah, and one of the biggest things, I think as well as we've seen from day one, is kind of the chance for a lot of teams to get their nerves out as well, Nagura. We saw it at a Perplex where, in their Necrotic Wake, they had their catastrophic wipe. We didn't see Echo get to that point, of course, but they're making those mistakes that against an equal opponent would not fly.
Yeah, definitely. But the one thing that I actually liked by Echo, even though it ended up costing them, was the fact that they just pulled that last pride on top of the boss, because I assume that's part of their strategy, even though they knew they are this far ahead, right? Because they can watch the stream, even though it is delayed, at that point they knew they're really far ahead. So they didn't have to do this. They could have just finished off the pride and then pulled the boss and played completely safe. But because this is something that is part of their strategy, they just said, you know what, we need to try this because we have to pull this off against another team like Perplex, right? So I like that they tried it. They had a mistake there, but they still managed to recover. So yeah, I like something like that coming out of Echo, still trying their high-end strategies and their risky stuff, even if they're really far ahead.
Yeah, most definitely. And, it's also going to start pushing us towards some of the time trial dungeons as well here, Tettles, because, we already know how much they love Sanguine Depths, but when it comes to time trials, Echo was ready for battle on these ones. They were absolutely stomping these.
Yeah, I mean, they had the #1 time in both the Theater of Pain and the Necrotic Wake, which are the next 2 dungeons, which were the time trial dungeons. And so even though they are the number 2 seed on the weekend, they were able to take down the Theater of Pain and Necrotic Wake in pretty convincing fashion. We've seen 12-10 Necrotic Wake is just so fast. That's unbelievably quick. And honestly, the 1833 Theater of Pain is nothing to scoff at either. We've seen them change their routing a lot in that dungeon, and I think that that's one of the biggest things for how to be able to achieve a time like that in Theater of Pain is just where you're spawning your prides, where you're actually dealing with the packs, what mobs you're able to pull with what, and what mobs you're able to pull with the bosses, because there's a lot of times where for a live Theater of Pain run, you just wouldn't pull any mobs with the boss. There's no real point. But for MDI style stuff, how many Shackled Souls are you able to pull with the boss? Are you able to pull trash in with Gore Chop? Is there anything that you can do potentially with Zab by leaving mobs CC'd off to the side or something? Some weird strategies like that. You never really know what the teams are going to come up with.
Most definitely. And, we didn't see any crazy innovation out of Sanguine Depths, and Zyra, you were talking about as well. They just had to play their strategy through, but those chip deaths and everything started adding up near the end.
Yeah, and there was some really unbecoming mistakes, not skipping this pride properly. They were dragging it up the stairs, the last mob to proc this prideful up the stairs. forgetting that they had to like get out of range to invis it. It looked like they were planning on visiting it, but then they just ended up aiming it with trash afterwards. And then we got to general call, and things went south fast for them. Now, fortunately, the comp that you run is pretty self-sustaining. Like, you really don't need a healer. I mean, honestly, like, look at the numbers, right? Now is doing all the healing by himself pretty much. And then when Zelia goes down, you know, Frag can death strike on the DK. Miraz can provide some off heals. They should be fine for the most part. Genji even probably has the
but
endurance.
he had PI, man. He had power infusion.
You know what?
They just
He
didn't
did.
want to res him. They
They
could
had
have
2%
res him
left on the boss.
with
No.
the power infusion. Yeah, you got a
No.
power
Jack,
He
infusion.
didn't
just
deserve to
like-
get the rest.
No.
That's
He
right.
didn't deserve to get the
That's
rest
right.
after that initial
No, he
mistake.
didn't. He didn't deserve it at all.
Wow. Unbelievable.
Priest
See,
apologist, automatic Jack.
Jimmy's death was understandable, right? He didn't have a healer to keep him alive, but Zelia, no.
Oh.
No.
No forgiveness out of this one. Well, let's move on. The Theater of Pain. We've got Fortified, Sanguine, and Grievous coming in on to this one. Settles, let's talk about it. What kind of mind control, what kind of mob CC you were talking about earlier? Where's that going to break down at?
I think that there will be like a lot of different stuff, like a different skips. I think the biggest point of discrepancy from like what you would see on live versus how groups do this in the MDI is typically like the Koltharak wing and the Zav wing. I think a lot of groups elect to skip many of the prides in the Zav wing, which is like the champion wing, and they try to make sure that they are able to like even skip the Arbalist commander patrol as well. And then in the Koltharak area, which is the Lich area, you have like Shackled Souls being skipped, and then you have like a weird pull that's like the Bone Reaver. The Bone Reaver isn't typically pulled on live, although it's not bad count to health ratio, especially whenever you just like pull the Bone Mages in with it. But making sure that you are able to mitigate the amount of healing from stuff like Sanguine, making sure that your healer is able to have everybody topped up through Grievous, very important. I think that we are going to probably see as few of the oh gosh, what are those big boys called that put that nasty dot on their whole entire party? That nasty
It's
disease.
the Soulbinders.
No, I want to call them blight bags, but that's not it.
Oh, yeah. It's
The gas bags.
gas bags.
Gas
I
bags,
suspect we're
yeah.
going to see
the rancid
minimal-
gas bags.
minimal
The one that
amounts of
does
gas
the-
bags pulled.
The frontal and the backle.
The back,
That's
yeah,
right.
he's got the back,
Yeah.
exactly.
He goes fronty backsies onto that one. Always got to watch out for him because he is no joke in terms of just the regular AoE damage, the movement required for it. But we're all set to go as Echo and Sloth are ready to square off here in Theater of Pain for game number 2.
All right, let's see what those two teams can show us here in this time trial dungeon. Of course, Echo did get the number 1 seat in the time trials here. They did have a time of 18 minutes and 33 to be able to get that number 1 seed. So let's see that strategy. Let's see what they're doing to be this quick in the dungeon. Now, one thing to note about Sanguine is that you can actually lose quite a lot of time if you decide to pull trash on top of bosses, which we usually see in Theater of Pain, right? We do see, especially this very first pull, where either the Blackthorn or all of the trash is being pulled on top of the boss. You gotta be really careful with that Sanguine there, just because these 3 bosses, some of them, they don't move very fast. Some of them just stand still and cast, and if they stand in a Sanguine pool, then you're in trouble.
Yeah. So you did see Echo there using a paralysis on one of the mobs, not pulling all of the trash into the first boss, keeping that mob CC'd off to the side, and the bosses are actually dying
It's
so
melting.
fast. Yeah.
Oh my god. Look at the mated the hunter.
30%. Okay, so Sathel is the mob that they're focusing down. This is interesting. So this isn't typical to what you'll do on live. Echo focuses down Sathel because at 30%, that mob puts a shield on itself, and the shield is a pretty substantial amount. And so on live, you're going to focus down Decia because it does the most amount of damage to your tank. But whenever you have stupid amounts of bursts like that from Echo, it makes a lot of sense to actually focus down Sathel a little bit earlier. On the side of Sloth, their cleave is just not as even as on the side of Echo's. Passerin is sitting at 33%, while Sathel and Decia are both sub 10%. And Echo is just going to take an early lead just by virtue of having probably quicker kicks on Passerin, probably just a little bit better cleave on pull.
Yeah, looks like it. As Sloth is about to finish up those bosses now as well. But yeah, it really goes to show again how min-maxy Echo always is with these kind of things, right? You saw them gathering up everything immediately, everything being kicked instantly, as you said, to be able to stack it all up, to not lose any sort of cleave damage. Well, Sloth, on the other hand, did have a lot of damage as well, of course, but sometimes an ad or a boss didn't get interrupted immediately, and then you lose a second here and there because some of your cleave abilities don't hit all 3 mobs, and also whatever target you're focusing as well because of the shield, like you mentioned. Now, Echo is using that invis pod actually to get past these souls. These souls are incredibly dangerous actually on Fortified, especially with Grievous and Sanguine as well. This can be really, really dangerous because they do a huge amount of group damage. As you can see, Mara's dropping incredibly low, and they're pulling it on top of the Portal Guardian as well, which casts the Soul Storm, huge AoE. You see Fragments dropping low as well, the Disc Bubble coming out by Saelia, making sure everyone stays alive, and now they're kiting out of these Sanguine pools that got dropped by the souls.
Sloth doing something kind of similar. They drop a binding shot in the doorway to have all of the shackled souls funnel in, and keeps them out of line of sight just a little bit early, so where they're able to have that cleave super even. I really liked how Sloth did that. I thought that was a little bit even more refined than what Echo did with. They had the shackled souls bound out the doorway so that they were perfectly stacked. After they come out of the binding, the elemental is already at like 70% of its HP, and they're able to just like drop the wild spirits and then just completely burn as much DPS as they want to. I thought that looked really good for Sloth. Echo still a slight lead just due to the fact that they were faster on the boss, now making their way towards the next Portal Guardian, towards the next Soulbinder and the Bone Mages over here, pulling 3 Bone Mages, 1 Soulbinder, and then the Portal Guardian. Whew.
That's actually a really insane pull because you have the 3 Maguses who have to be interrupted when they cast the Bone Spear, but you also have the Soulbinder who casts these magic divas. You see one on Fragments that does a huge amount of single target damage on top of the Soulstone by the Portal Guardian. But if you have the amount of damage that we see that Echo just had, with Maris just using his offensive cooldowns here, then I guess you don't need those interrupts because the Silence Sigil by now was enough, basically. The mobs died after the Silence ran out, so they don't actually need to have those extra interrupts. Still needed a lot of healing, though, by Saelia because of that Soulstorm and the magic debuff, but did manage to finish it off as they're now also done with the Pride. And as soon as you click on those portals, you actually get healed to full, which is really nice for Grievous. So Saelia does not have to heal people out of the Grievous range. They can just click on the portal and you get healed to full.
This dungeon is definitely one of the more mana-taxing dungeons on Grievous. This dungeon and probably Plaguefall are probably the 2 worst offenders in terms of how to make your priests go 101, just due to a lot of the ambient damage that happens on a lot of the boss fights and some of the trash packs. So that's definitely something that we need to watch out for as this dungeon progresses. Right now, Echo does a great job of being able to deal with this Bone Reaver and those Bone Mages, making their way towards Kultharok. They're going to be spawning their 40% Pride here momentarily. Sloth, hot on their heels, though, doing very similar pulls in terms of size and just in terms of like what they're pulling. I really think that Sloth is doing a great job here.
Yeah, I definitely agree. We just saw Sloth do the same pull with the Quadra Magus, basically, where they had the Silence Sigil to pull the right side and the single target interrupts to pull the left side on top of this, to be able to have them move, right? Because some of these pulls, once they are gathered, they look easy, right? But the problem is, these mobs, they don't just walk to you in the middle. So the gathering part can be really dangerous. So you really have to make sure you have everything planned perfectly. And having these kind of silence sigils being used properly and having the single target interrupts assigned to be able to have the mobs move. Really well done by Sloth. As Echo is dealing with this Dark Speaker and the Pride, they dropped really low, but did manage to finish it off as, again, they're just clicking that portal to make sure they get healed to full.
Yep. So now they have Kultharok to deal with. They're probably going to end up pulling some Shackled Souls into the boss. That's a pretty common tactic. You do see Frag there. Immediately casts Misdirection on now, and then starts to line of sight out of those Shackled Souls. They'll portal up eventually. Snapping kind of changed a little bit. This expansion, the mobs have to evade for a few seconds before they will snap to their threat target. And so Echo pulling those Shackled Souls into the boss. Oh my gosh! Did you see that in the picture-by-picture screen? On Sloth, their tank got knocked off the ledge by the Doom Winds, and the Priest with the presence of
Really?
mind to grip him back on. Oh my gosh!
Wow, I didn't see that, but that's oh my. Good job, Mr. Priest.
That was kinda
saving
sick.
the tank. Wow, nice grip. I love seeing those grips. We also, we have, of course, Jack, our host, also playing Priest. And I've seen some clips where Jack is just saving someone's life by gripping them of certain death while they are flying off the platform. So I really like seeing those, those grips by the Priest, just having such a presence of mind to be able to look at other players and save them from their own mistakes. I really like seeing that kind of stuff.
Yes, Priest Apologist, Automatic Jack. Now Echo will be down in Koltharok here, and then making their way. I think that we've seen a lot of groups. We've actually seen multiple routes. We've seen a lot of groups go into the Zav area last in most recent weeks, but we have seen the Zav area be second. And so since there's been 3 weeks of downtime since the last MDI with BlizzCon Online and whatnot, there could be potential for strategy change. But it looks like, okay, so the Gorechop area is second. Very typical strategy here. You do see Frag camoing ahead and actually pulling some of the extra mobs, the chop guys, into this pack. Basically, they need to make sure that they kick Withering Discharge. That's the most important thing. Beyond that, kicking the Disease Horror on his meat shield and not getting chopped down by the Butcher. Those are all the important parts of this pull. And, oh, okay, so they didn't trap the Sludge Spewer. They trapped the extra Butcher. That's interesting.
Do you think it's because of Devour Flash, maybe? Because they cannot interrupt
Potentially.
both of them? Because there's already a Butcher in this pack they're fighting right now. And they have the Chop cast as well, which... does do a lot of damage. I saw Fragments get hit by the first chop there, which is just like a bleed effect that gets casted on a random person. And he almost died to that. That was a huge amount of damage. You see one chop here on Maris as well. You see how much damage that does. I guess if you have double chop, maybe even go on the same person, maybe that's just something that is too risky for them to deal with. And then also you have the Devour Flesh, which is just a heal that goes off if it goes through. So you need to interrupt it with a Dragon's Breath or a stun to be able to just not have the heal go off. Looks like they're using their Shadow Melt to just completely avoid that gas bag and the Butcher though. So they're just Shadow Melting off the aggro. Looks like they're up to 58%. So they're just about to proc their 60% Pride here.
Yeah, okay, so this is actually such a scary pull.
Wow, with the gas bag, okay.
With the gas bag, which will continue to have your whole entire group and groups.
Frag
gets hit by the backle. No.
They do have a battle rest, but they need to use the engineering rest to get him back up. Because they don't have a class that can use the rest. Okay, Fragnance is back up. This is still very dangerous though because they lost the damage of Fragnance, right? He had used his true shot. Sally dropping incredibly low, Sally going down. They don't have a battle rest available. This is gonna be a full team wipe. There's no way they can recover from this. With the Pride being up and all the trash still jumping around. Without the battle rest, yeah, this is gonna be a wipe. And this is really this is a huge time loss for them because they don't have Shadow Melt ready. So they have to somehow do the skip without Shadow Melt. So either they have an Invis Potion ready, or I'm not sure how they or they have to wait for Shadow Melt to get back to that point where they just wiped.
Well, I mean, on top of that, they lost all of their offensive CDs. They lost the True Shot. They lost the Wild Spirits. They lost the Zwin. They lost the Power Infusion. They literally lost everything going into that pack. Now also has his Last Resort procced too. And so on the side of Sloth, this is not looking too bad for them now. They may be able to capitalize on this Echo mistake. And it's so in the Sanguine Depths, Echo had some mistakes, but Sloth wasn't in position to be able to capitalize. Now, in this Theater of Pain, Echo's had mistakes, and I think Sloth may be able to capitalize on this.
Yeah, I think so as well. Okay, so Echo did manage to use the trap of Fragments and then Fragments was the one getting in combat first, and then he feigned death off the aggro. So good job by them to still managing to just skip that one Butcher that they had to go past. But yeah, Sloth having some issues as well as Marky going down. This is such a scary pull that both of these teams are attempting to do here. With one death on the Windwalker side, they have to get a battle rest off because we also have Sanguine as well, and we also have Grievous and everyone plus the Pride. Ankler going down on the Hunter too, and the Demon Hunter dropping incredible gold. They do have 2 battle rests available, so they can get them both back up, which they are doing actually. So this might be something they can recover from, but there's still so much damage and the healer going down. oh no, this is gonna be a full team wipe for them as well. And this was the chance for Sloth to come back, but then they have the same mistake or the same full team wipe as we see Echo have.
I mean, I think that just is a testament to how ridiculous that pull is that both
Yes,
teams are
this is
doing.
incredibly hard.
They got that actually is that's one of the hardest pulls that you can potentially do. Just
Yes.
double sludge spewer. On top of that, diseased horror with the meat shield cast. They have the backle for the gas bag. Everybody's sitting in Grievous.
And the ticking AoE, right? I mean, the gas
Exactly.
bag does a huge amount of AoE, plus Grievous, plus the Pride that
And
spawns
Sanguine.
mid-pull. Like, that's actually just an insane pull, and I'm kind of speechless that they can even pull this off at all. Like, we saw both teams fail to this, but they attempted the strategy, so they must know that they can do it. Which is crazy to me that they can pull this off. Oh well, maybe we see them pull it off next time. Not this time around, as both of those teams had a full team wipe. But yeah, Echo in the lead again now. Both teams just wiping in the same spot in the dungeon.
Yeah. Very, very unfortunate circumstances. I think the mid pull Pride is also, like you said, really funny for that. I think it's absurd that they go into that pack with 58% enemy forces and they're just like, yeah, this is gonna be a reasonable pull. There's nothing that could possibly
This is
go wrong
fine.
here. Yeah.
Oh well, crazy. These MDI teams, some pulls that they're just trying to pull off, especially in these time trial dungeons, right? Because this is a time trial dungeons that they have competed in last week already. And it always seems like the time trial dungeons are the ones where we see the craziest strategies because they have so much time to practice them. And even after the time trials, they refine their strategies even more to get an even faster strategy between time trials and the actual tournament. So it's just crazy to see what kind of pulls these guys are attempting. Either way, they did finish off Gorchop now. On Echo's side, Sloth did manage to also get back to this point. So not that far behind because it is a 45 dungeon, so Gold Chop shouldn't be taking that long. But yeah, still echoing the lead at this point, even with that wipe, as they're now going to that last wing. This last wing takes a decent amount of time because it just says so many mini bosses, right? Which just cost you quite a lot of time to get rid of.
Yeah. So now Echo having to deal with all of these champions in the Zav wing. This is, again, like we were talking about earlier, this is one of the most dangerous parts for Grievous for sure. So watching how Xaylia is able to manage his mana is definitely going to be one of the most crucial parts. They're going to get a Pride off of this mini boss, and I wonder where they're going to spawn the Pride. We've seen a lot of different stuff coming from Echo with this 80% Pride, where it ends up being spawned. Are they going to leave it out like in the courtyard area to where they're able to get it and kill it right before they end up going to the last boss? What are they going to do with that kind of deal?
I want them to just spawn it in this arena and then play it with the boss when the people get sent down into it.
Uh-huh.
I mean, don't you like that strat?
I guess they don't need a healer for that either.
True.
With the 10% damage gain that the person gets from winning the duel as well, they should be able to instantly kill the Pride.
Yeah, that's a huge damage gain, which totally makes up for the time that you lose from getting sent into this arena. I love this boss.
Alright, so now the Invis potions come through on the side of Echo, making sure that Pride does not get engaged. They'll be grabbing it later on. Ooh, okay. So interestingly enough, they got the good mini boss for this wing. Did you know that you can get this mini boss if you walk up and start the RP whenever she's casting the charge?
Oh my god, this is one of those myths that people think are true, and then it's like, oh, I tried it 2 times and I got the good one both times.
So it's actually, I think it's about the damage instances that the mobs take, not necessarily about the timing of when you actually walk.
How certain are you about this right now? Oh, Sanguine! Okay, she did charge out of it. Okay, not too bad.
That's a bad question because I'm not certain at all. Okay, there's ways to get it consistent. There's ways to get it consistent, but there's a lot that's going on with it that makes it hard to get 100% of the time. But I think it has to do with like the most recent mob to get like meleeed with the special attackers. There's a lot
That's
going
what
on.
I heard too, right? Like I heard two different things. Like some people also said, like on the next duel, when the shield is down and you pull them, then you get the good mob. And then Fem said if the melee, like whoever is melee swinging at the moment, and so on. And then he tried it and it didn't work. And he said, oh, he was just slightly too late. That was like, yeah, okay.
Well, okay, so the champions with the shield, the reason that doesn't work though is because like always whenever the person has the shield up, it will always win the duel because it has the shield up, right? And so that's why that's like that. But I don't know. There's some weird technology with it. Nobody has it consistent yet.
We're working on it, okay? We will figure it out eventually. And we will have a perfect way. And then we won't tell anyone.
Uh-huh. All right, so another point to fraud, like Nikura said. During the middle of the duel.
Just kidding. They're not actually pulling that pride. But one thing to note as well is that jokes aside, they actually did pull the pride at the exit of this arena area here. So they're actively trying to not go there because the aggro range of the pride is decently high, and like a lot of things can actually pull it too. Like we've seen pets run to them and pull them and that kind of stuff. So they're making sure they're standing as close to the boss's platform as possible to not pull that pride on accident. Of course, that would be causing disaster. There's no way that it can actually deal with the pride on top of this boss.
Ooh, Sloth having some deaths.
Some issues.
Oh,
with the
okay.
pride.
It's fine. Honestly, it's fine. They only had one death in a corner, right?
Yeah?
That's all. It was really, really scary.
So Echo are about to finish off Xav here. They do have the Bloodlust available. Seems like they're going to be using it for the last boss. And the Pride as well, right? Because they could theoretically choose to completely skip this Pride if they would spawn it in a different location. But they don't want to. Okay, so they actively choose to play this Pride for the last boss. They want to have this extra damage. Because they need to trigger the event anyway, right? Someone is going up right now. Looks like it's Fragments. So the Hunter is going up to that last boss platform, activating the RP, and then jumping back down to finish off this Pride. And because of this RP, it is worth it for them to play this Pride, of course, because what else are they going to be doing? They're just going to be AFK waiting for the boss to spawn. Anyway, so that's why they skipped the 80% Pride with Invis, then just left it there at the entrance, and they're now dealing with it after Xav, which is really, really efficient, very time efficient. As they also still haven't procced at 100% Pride.
Yeah.
That's why they initially CC'd that one mob at the entrance with an in-cap by Maris. And at the very end of this fight, they will kill it off to spawn their 100% Pride, and then they don't have to kill it, right?
Yeah, on the small picture-in-picture, I think Sloth had another full team wipe. Very, very unfortunate for them. Honestly, they had not a bad Theater of Pain run. I think if they didn't have any mistakes, they could have definitely have beaten Echo. But unfortunate couple of errors. I mean, this dungeon is really, really tough, especially on these affixes. Now Echo very firmly in the driver's seat, kicking that Ritualist in. Now they just have to cleave down Mordretha and that Ritualist together. It's fortified, every cooldown still up. They even still have that Bloodlust on them. They had that Prideful buff on them for the vast duration of this. And all they have to do is dodge out of the way of the charge. And Echo should be downing this boss and taking this series 2-0 momentarily.
That's right, Echo going to be taking that victory there as Mordretha finally falls with a 21-minute and a couple seconds there, 21:05 as their final timer there for Theater of Pain. They take that 2-0 victory as well over Sloth. And I mean, Zyro, compared to some of the time trials that we've seen, not really as fast as we thought they would be.
Yeah, this was not the greatest performance from Echo, but there are multiple reasons to this. I think if we go back to Cup 2, I think we said this for Perplexed as well. They had a kind of off Spires of Ascension run, and then we looked at the bracket for them, and they didn't play Spires for the rest of the tournament. So I'm not sure if that's also the case here for Echo, but taking a look at the numbers here, actually, not really that crazy of a damage difference. I think the only real thing that I can look at here and be like, wow, that's a pretty big difference is the Windwalker Monk damage. Looks like Mirrors is doing a pretty significant amount more, but everyone else is pretty close together.
It's pretty high numbers for a theater.